Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I frequently forget to cover all the time zones. We'll give everybody a minute to get in here. For those who don't know, this is Eye on ESI with our affiliate partner, True Staffing. Jared Casalio is with us. I am here. Maribel is out today, so you're stuck with us. And we're looking forward to a lively conversation about all things related to jobs and placement and recruiting and headhunting and all that good stuff. So let me see. Are we still? I know we've kind of settled on our participants. So without further delay, I'm Mike Quartararo. I'm the president of ACEDS. And we are joined today by Jared Casellia from True Staffing Partners. Jared, say hello.
Hello, good to be with everybody again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Awesome. So we've got, we do this every month, and we've got some things to talk about. So Jared, why don't you just dive into the deck, and then listen, anybody who has questions, punch them into the chat, and we'll try to take them as we go.
Cool. So we figured we'd start with the takeaways from Legal Week 2024, as many of us just came back from the show last week. It was a good show. I think it was an enlightening show for a variety of reasons on how a number of different things will impact both the legal community, but for our purposes, we're really going to focus on how things will impact the e-discovery community within and without legal as the broader kind of nomenclature. What's really clear to us here at True, maybe for the first time in 15, 20 years, that I've been going to Legal Week, or Legal Tech as it used to be called, is that it's no longer just a e-discovery conference. I think for a long time, Legal Week was sort of called e-discovery week behind closed doors. And certainly the vendor presence at Legal Week was high. And the vendors in e-discovery are spending a lot of money, but they're also the ones making a lot of money right now. What was really great to see for me is so many founders and startups that have something to do with AI that are looking to make their way into legal. And my hope, and I believe my prediction, is that we're going to see a renaissance of providers, service, and software over the next 3 to 5 years begin to rise. And then, as things always do in our industry, consolidate over the next 3 to 5 years. So over the next 10 years, I think AI is going to have a big impact on the legal community in general, probably e-discovery later than other parts of legal. And I know Mike definitely sees eye to eye with me on that.
No, and I'm with you because, like, I remember, like you said, 15, 20 years ago, I forget how many legal weeks I've been to, but it was, it didn't start as e-discovery. Then sort of e-discovery became the thing, and now that's on the wane, although e-discovery has become much more mature. But anybody who's at the show last week could walk the exhibit hall or see any of the signage and see that it's now AI Legal Week, right? So there you have it. All right, what else?
So what is AI's real impact on us for this year, for 2024, and what were the signals of that at Legal Week? And for me, the biggest impact AI is going to have this year on e-discovery is the time suck. And what do I mean by the time suck? I mean, leaders in e-discovery, whether they're practice support managers, client support directors, product managers and directors, the C-suite, they are being pulled into conversations around AI in an exploratory fashion. And that pull is taking them away from other responsibilities that they will no longer have time to do this year and perhaps perpetually. As those other responsibilities become clear, someone else will have to do them. Is that a deputy? Is that a new hire? Okay, that person takes that responsibility. Now, what do they have to relinquish because they don't have the bandwidth? And so it goes on and on and on and on. And this is good because what this causes is opportunity for people to get into the business, or for contractors to get work doing things that teams, particularly at law firms, no longer have the time or bandwidth to do as their senior leadership begins to explore AI and no longer has the time to do some of the things that they've done traditionally over the last few years.
Are you seeing roles like this yet, or is it still early days?
No, it's still early days. Look, there are AI jobs out there, but within legal, I think generally speaking, we haven't even seen people selling these things yet. And the first thing to come is a sales ecosystem and service providers where they've got reps out there selling this stuff. that hasn't even happened yet. We're not even there yet. It's mostly founder sales driven, or if they're at really large organizations like a Thomson Reuters, you know, that's different, because then they just get their existing people to begin selling this and they train them on it. I think we're about a year away before we start seeing the codification of jobs, but that's what will happen this year, is that codification. For me in legal, it's going to be about regulation. It's going to be about the EU AI Act, probably is the first, right? And we'll see a similar, in my opinion, sort of reaction to that we did to GDPR, where there becomes a job ecosystem for lawyers, the way there was for DPOs, data protection officers, to come in and say, okay, we are now compliant with these regulations as it relates to how we're using AI. That to me is what's first. What's quickly behind that are the attorneys and practitioners that are wielding these exploratory experimental technologies in a way that can brand them as AI experts. And that's coming too. But most of those people are being homegrown within their organizations. Organizations are not looking outside to hire talent like that to come in yet, because they don't even know what they're looking for yet. Right. So they're leaning on their existing people who have institutional knowledge to begin building AI modules and playing with them, right? But no, in terms of there being a codification of jobs the way we have in e-discovery, analysts, specialists, project managers, review managers, even analytics overlays, we're nowhere near that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like there's a number of products out there. They're kind of in the startup stage. I guess that's sort of, it's an immature market, let's just call it that. But what's interesting to me is that like the firms are really not talking about this, right?
Oh, no one's talking about it.
Yeah,
no one wants to talk. Look, when we're all experimenting, no one wants to tell their competitors what they're doing that's really smart and progressive and out of the box. And it's been very difficult to get people to talk about it. What I can get people to talk about, which is where I formulate a lot of this prophecy, is how much of your time, leader, are you spending dealing with AI? Just give me a percentage. Most of it's like 20 to 30% of their time. All right, that's like a third of your job. It's a fourth of your job. What did you give up that you don't have time to do anymore? Oh, I don't have time to do this. Okay, who's doing that? Oh, well, my deputy is. Great. What did she give up in order to now be able to do those things? And that's where we're seeing this chain reaction.
And how does that eventually translate into like a line worker, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And look, we'll get into what those line workers are, right? It's project managers, it's REL1 processing, it's frontline review management, you know, things that are pretty traditional that can now be compartmentalized. Yeah. And it speaks to, you know, observation number 3. For the first time in maybe 5 years, we've got as many openings at law firms as we do at service providers. There's a lot of reasons why, which we'll unpack as we go through today's phone conversation. But for me, the biggest reason is they are now insourcing technology that is cloud tech that allows them to scale in ways that they haven't been able to scale with prem models. And we're seeing a bigger demand for law firms saying, get me someone with REL1 processing, get me somebody that can come in and just do this piece of the puzzle as we begin to scale our organization. ESI sales demand is at an all-time high. I mean, we met with dozens and dozens of customers. The rule of thumb, and anyone who's worked with me in the sales side of the e-discovery business knows that I kind of live and die by this saying, all my customers are always looking for good sales reps. So it's really not about what's available. It's about when are you as a sales rep ready to come to market. The problem is the demand is really high. The available supply is pretty low. And what we're experiencing in the industry is a polarization of sales caliber. And we're also experiencing a polarization of vendor size. And the two are somewhat aligned, meaning there are really large vendors that are 100 million plus, and there are smaller boutiques that are 20 million and under, and there is very little ecosystem for vendors that are in between. At the really big providers, there are sales reps that do 10, 20, 30, 40 million, and there are sales reps that do 1, 1.5, 2, and very few that are doing between 3 and 5, right? So what you've got is an ecosystem of very successful, very expensive sales reps that people all want but hate to pay for, and an ecosystem of moderate success, respectable success, but success that doesn't ensure greater success according to employers if they hire those people. Much harder to make a job if you're a $1 to $2 million sales rep than it is if you are a $10 million sales rep. And companies are generally willing to spend more money for a big sales rep than they are hiring 3 or 4 and betting on one of them being a breakout star. We just don't see that kind of hiring behavior happening. And it's a real problem. I mean, vendors are trying to grow and they're having a very difficult time doing it through organic sales hiring.
How, Jared, does sort of market consolidation play into this, right? Are there bigger companies gobbling up smaller companies, or 2 big companies merging? What's the impact there?
Well, it's got a lot of impacts, not the least of which is it's probably the reason we see so much of it is it's the only way to really move the needle on revenue growth in a way that changes the nature of the company's success. Hiring 3 sales reps might take you 2 to 3 years for you to really see the success of those organically hired sales reps move the needle for the whole business. If you go buy a whole business, the opposite of that, right? You see that needle move right away.
Right.
But the other problem, Mike, that's now, as we polarize vendors and we have big shops and little shops and very little in the middle is, you know, if you get acquired or you're part of a big shop, your greatest challenge is now splitting accounts, right? Well, I got a relationship with a partner at Gibson. Well, that rep over there owns Gibson. So you're going to have to split with that rep. So that means now that you might be selling $3 million worth of revenue, but only getting origination and attribution for 1.5. Sometimes you got to do a 3-way split. And now you're only getting attribution for 1. And that dynamic is driving salespeople to the market and making some reps say, why am I going to go to a big shop and sell 5 and fight for it that is really 10 to 15 million when I can go to a smaller shop and sell 6 million, 5 million, 3 million and make more money because I'm not splitting everything.
Right.
It also comes to a bigger problem that we'll talk about in a second, which is the number 2 reason why sales reps are coming to us in the last 90 days. And it was so extreme that it actually made the number 2 slot for what's motivating sales rep for all of last year is they're frustrated with deliverables and performance. They're coming to us saying, I can no longer sell working at this employer because they've screwed up too many projects. And the customers that have trusted me for 5, 6 years that I've been here aren't going to give me any more business. And I have to leave now. And that is the number 2 reason why sales reps are coming to us, telling us that they want to move. The number 1 reason being their commission plans change. And that's always been the number 1 reason and sort of never changes. The last thing is customer service. And Mike made a great point on our prep call. This should be delineated from project management, although I would make this statement inclusive of project management and customer service as being a key differentiator. I think we went through a whole period where it was tech or the model or your pricing, and all that seems to have kind of been equalized out there in the vendor community. And what customers are most frustrated with on the law firm and corporate side is the quality and caliber of customer service, client service, and project management that they're getting from their vendors. And look, part of this is because of the economics of things and how those economics have changed in terms of talent acquisition, how vendors are making their money post-pandemic. There's a lot less money being made on hosting, processing, and production, and a lot more money being made on project management time. But I don't know that most vendors raise their prices to the same equal to what they paid for in terms of acquiring talent in 21 and 22. And as a result, we're seeing vendors want less experienced, less expensive talent so they can create greater profitability on their billable hour for that talent. But over the last year, we've seen a lot of pushback from law firms and corporations on their frustration with the quality of service that they're getting from a lot of service providers. So my estimate, and this isn't a takeaway, but I would expect you're going to see a lot of companies switching providers over the next 12 months as a result of those last 2 dynamics: sales reps changing jobs and customer service and project management deliverables not meeting expectations.
And I think that's indicative of a maturing market, right? Look, the technology is the technology, right? I don't care what platform you're using. They all kind of do the same stuff. They get you through the process. The handful of things that you got to get right at each stage of the e-discovery lifecycle, are those changing much? No, not really. So how do you differentiate yourself? The only way you differentiate yourself is with great project management, great customer responsiveness, customer service. That's what leads to successful outcomes. The tools do what the tools do. The processes are what the processes are. It's the people that are driving these projects that are making the difference. So I think that's really important, and always something. People are the most valuable asset you could have in any organization, frankly.
Well, that's going to become hyperbolic in the next few years, I think. So we also this year at Legal Week, and this was a big announcement for us, is we released our 2024 e-discovery jobs report. I don't think there's ever been a report like this that's ever been published for the community. There have been some salary surveys in the past. This is certainly a salary benchmark, though it is not a survey. It's actually based on people actually accepting jobs and what they actually got paid, and what employers are actually offering, not what they're advertising, not what people are getting in terms of raises. So all the data you're going to see in this is really a point of hire, but it covers so much more. And in the next 15 minutes of this call, we're going to breeze through some of the things that we didn't cover. Anyone who wants a copy, you can download it. There's the QR code. I'll give you a second to take a little snapshot, get your phones out. You can download everything there. You can also always reach out to me or anyone on my team, and we'll get you a copy, digital copy. If you want to print copy, those too.
Is it on the website, Jared?
It is on the website. If you go to www.trustaffingpartners.com, it'll pop right up on the homepage, and you can download it there as well.
Awesome.
What this covers is so much more than salary, though. We're covering speed of hire. We're covering motivations, and let's unpack those right now. We'll put up 2022 and 2023 just so that you could see them side by side in comparison. One of the biggest differences in 2023 is that a lot of people were unemployed, and that was driving a lot of people to the marketplace. There were a lot of layoffs in the first 3 quarters of last year. Q4 was definitely a bounce back, but we all thought we were going into a recession, and a lot of people got laid off. But number 5 in 2023 is really what everyone should be looking at, because we've already seen number 5 rise to like number 3 in the last 30 days. We think that burnout is going to be the number 2 reason, if not the number 1 reason, why e-discovery people come to us and ask to change jobs, because they are simply too understaffed. We saw significant decline in the volume of jobs available for job seekers in 2023 compared to 2022 and even 2021. Obviously, you can't compare it to 2020 because that was 6 months of nothing happening for any of us. But 2023 was not a good year for most organizations in terms of their sales, in terms of their revenue, certainly in terms of their hiring growth. I think everybody was sort of figuring out what is going to happen at a macroeconomic level. And as a result, they hired less. And as a result, their employees are reaching burnout now. If you're an organization that measures utilization and your utilization has been north of 95% for your entire staff for more than 30 days, this should be sending up warning flags that you have a real attrition problem, because that is what's driving people to the marketplace.
And you know what bugs me is, and anybody who listens to this monthly broadcast knows that I've been saying this for a long time, that false sense of a recession coming, everybody holding onto their wallet like they were about to lose their checkbook, and it just didn't happen. And look at the market now. So not to pat myself on the back, but I think that's what caused this problem in 2023. And it's now things are staffed leanly, and people are being asked to obviously do more with less, and that leads to the burnout.
It does. And in our business, it can get hyperbolic really quickly, right? I mean, I have some law firms that went from, oh, December was slow, December was dead. And then January came and they're like, oh my God, I got to hire 2 people. Yeah. Like we're so busy. It can turn on a dime in litigation. So as an employer, you've really got to try to project what your pipeline looks like in terms of business, whether you're a law firm or vendor, and anticipate hiring needs before they happen. Otherwise, you're backfilling people. And look, I don't want our community and industry to find themselves in the position that they put themselves in 21 and 22, where 2/3 of the industry is changing jobs. And all of a sudden, you don't have options. You have to hire quickly, because if you don't, no one's responding to your customers. No one's responding to your attorneys, right? You're missing regulatory compliance deadlines, right? You're missing production deadlines. That can't happen. And so when you're backed into a corner, what do? You spend more money, you speed your speed of hiring. That's exactly what we saw happen in 2022. So much so that salaries got inflated by 20 to 40% in e-discovery. So if you made a job move in 2021 or 2022, good for you. You probably got a bigger increase in bump and pay than anyone will get moving jobs over the next several years. And
correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, that's the time, or like now is a time where people start turning to contractors, right?
So contracting is through the roof. I mean, I can tell you guys that we can go to the next slide. just real quick, Mike, before we go to contracting, these are the top 5 motivations for sales reps. I know I touched on it briefly, but you could see that service delivery issues is number 2. It's never even made the top 5 list before. So for it to be number 2, and it wasn't even on the top 5 list for the first 3 quarters. We've had so many sales reps come to us in Q4 complaining about that issue, which connects to all the other points I'm making about some of the struggles I think vendors and law firms are having with each other right now in terms of caliber of service. What's interesting about, so we'll come back, Mike, we'll come back to the contract piece in a second. Speed of hire is really important. I want to make sure we touch on this because we didn't touch on this last week or last month. And this is maybe the most important change post-pandemic that we all have to embrace besides this working from home thing, which we'll unpack in a second. As you could see in the peak of the pandemic, Q1, Q2, and Q3 of 2022, things were moving at like lightning speed because they had to. Half the people's staff were gone. They had to fill the jobs. This wasn't an add to staff job. These were replacement jobs, right? What we've seen happen over the last year and a half is a stabilization towards a new normal. And that new normal is what you see circled in red. So if you're an executive, a lit support director, manager, a partner at a law firm, it's about a 90-day process from the time we send a resume to the time verbal offers are accepted, right? Forget about background check and all of that. Resume gets sent, offer gets extended and accepted. That's what these numbers are. 80 days for a sales rep, 40 days for mid-market, which are PMs, analysts, et cetera, 10 days for contractors. And as you can see, that's fluctuated between 7 and 10 for a pretty consistent amount of time, but 10 to 14 is about what you can expect. Here's what's important about these numbers. If you wait longer than those numbers, chances are the candidate you're interviewing is going to get another offer, and you won't be the first offer they receive. Go ahead, MT, and cycle through this slide and go to the next one really quick. The offer acceptance rate. This is just showing you pre-pandemic compared to what the new normal is now. But if we go one more slide, MT, this shows you offer acceptance likelihood. This is a really important metric. If you look at 2022, what you'll see is if you were an employer and you extended an offer and that was the first offer a candidate received, you only had a 45% likelihood they were going to take it because they were getting a third, they were getting a second, they were getting a fourth, they were getting 4 offers, right? And they were waiting until they had them all to choose which one was best and then make a decision. People didn't have that option last year. In Q1 through 3, if you were the first offer a candidate received, you had an 80% likelihood they were going to say yes. 80% of the first offer on a job seeker that we represented received was accepted. We've never seen that ratio that high ever. And we've been tracking this for about 5 years now. That is remarkable. And it is because if you move quickly, if you move deliberately in what feels like a down economy, job seekers are going to take a bird in the hand rather than wait for the 2 in the bush because they know that bird in the hand might evaporate. And if it's a good offer, they're going to go for it. Now, as you can see, what happened in the last quarter of last year, that number dropped to 65%. 33% likelihood that a second offer would get accepted. What does that tell us? There's more jobs available. Job seekers that are in highest demand are now getting multiple offers. So the people who are getting multiple offers are the same people, right? And having a first offer, still a good odds, 65%. But it's diminishing as the market gets more competitive. So over the first quarter, our guidance to all hiring managers are be fast, be first. Your likelihood of getting a yes increases significantly. Significantly.
That's good to know.
Cool.
All right, 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh.
Remote, hybrid, in office. This is my favorite slide, and I know we've covered this a bit because it's just a total mirror image, right? You could see in 2015, 94% were 4 days or more in an office. In 2023, 92% or 3 days or less. What's important about those 2 blue bars in 22 and 23, in 2022, 89% of jobs were remote or hybrid, but 69 were fully remote. That dropped to only 38% of the 92% in 2023 being fully remote. What this tells us is 3 days or fewer in office is the new normal. But what it also tells us is there aren't as many remote jobs, fully remote jobs available as there were before. So if you've got one, and that's the number one thing motivating you in your job, I would hold on to that job. There won't be hundreds of remote jobs. And when there are, the amount of candidates that those employers can explore are 20 to 30 times what employers who are looking for hybrid or in office can explore. So you've got a lot more competition for those remote jobs than you did in 2022 or even 2021. We anticipate that we'll see more people going back into the office, but 90% are going to be hybrid, 3 days or less. 3 days or less is the new norm. And if you're looking for 4 days or more, your job search could take another 90 days, which is what this next slide will articulate. So 25% average increase in base comp is what people expect to leave a fully remote job for a hybrid job. A 90-day extension to fill jobs that are 4 to 5 days. And you say, well, Jared, if that's the case, then how come your speed of hire is so fast? Well, because there's so few jobs that are 4 to 5 days that actually get filled. So it doesn't really impact the speed of hire when 92% of them are hybrid or fully remote. 50% increase in available talent. If you drop your in-office requirement from 3 to 2 days, you'll go from having 5 candidates to 7.5 candidates. You'll go from 10 to 15 instantly, because that's how many more people are open-minded to 2 days versus 3.
Jared, before we go too far, we've got a question.
Yeah.
And it sort of covers something we passed off, we moved on from. Here's the question. What sort of executive roles are people finding in 90 days? That is much faster than my experience and those of my peers.
So directors of lit support, managers of lit support, partners that are litigating e-discovery or litigation, some senior associates that are high end, you know, like on their way to partnership, they're the deputies to those partners, those positions. E-discovery attorneys in-house at corporations, we would put those at an executive level. Sales managers, anybody in sales leadership, client service directors, sometimes client service managers, we would include those at vendors, document review directors, C-suites at service providers and software companies. Those all take about 90 days. Now, keep in mind, some take 110, some take 80, but the average is about 90 days. And the reason we give that 90 days is because if you're taking 120 and you're wondering why you lost the candidate, that's why, because they got other offers at around 90 days. And so we're trying to find a timeline for people to say, this is about how long we can take until we're going to feel pressure from our job seekers to like make a decision because they've got other opportunities. So that 90 days is our guidance.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
So very quickly, contractor versus direct hire, to talk to your point, Mike, about a healthy ecosystem. When a job market is 50-50 with the amount of contract jobs versus the amount of full-time jobs, that's a really healthy ecosystem. What that says is if you want full-time work, it's there. If you want full-time employees, they're there. If you want contract workers, they're there. If you want contract work, it's there. We're headed in that direction. And what I think is really great about that is there are so many people out there in the industry that are choosing contract as the lifestyle choice. They get to work with a more broader variety of people. They get to test a company before they commit to being a full-time employee. They get to be remote. The number one way companies are circumventing their in-office requirements. I can't, it's taken me forever to find somebody 5 days a week. No one will come into my law firm 5 days a week. Let's hire a contractor. They're usually not held to the same standards as a full-time employee. And so contractors are being hired at lots of places that are taking 120, 180 days to find a full-time hire that'll come in 5 days a week.
Fair enough.
Here are the contractor skills, top 5 that we get requests for. Relativity admin and relativity 1 being the number 1 and 2 skills. These probably don't come as a surprise to many. Here are your monthly salary numbers. You can see this in replay. We can kind of go through this quickly. They have not really changed since the end of last month. They've pretty much been the same. Part of the reason why they've pretty much been the same is there wasn't a lot of full-time hiring in January. January was very quiet for full-time hiring. More contractors than I imagined got hired in January. It was very unequal in terms of contractors versus FTE. But we think it's going to flip in February. There's just so much in the pipeline. I mean, we're seeing people start now making the offers for the things they dragged their feet on in January, and we think that will continue to gain momentum into March. We covered this last week, so we're at the end. So let's skip this for now. But essentially what this tells you is less experience is making bigger increases when they change jobs right now. So if you're an e-discovery job seeker and you've got less than 6 years experience, now is the time for you to make a job. There are lots of jobs out there for you. you're going to wind up getting somewhere between a 20 and 30% into 32% increase in salary. And if you're somebody who's got 6 to 10 years experience, there are not that many jobs out there for you. And you may not get that increase in salary. The time to move was last year in 2022, or hang out for Q3 and 4 of this year. That's when that side of the market will probably heat up again. If you want resources from us, QR away. And Mike, we got any other questions? I can certainly hang out for a few minutes.
Not in the chat itself. I mean, a great summary for the month, obviously. Thanks for doing this. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for the couple of questions we did get. This is something that we do every month for those who are first timers. We try to give a good snapshot of what's going on in the industry at a moment in time. Obviously, it can change from month to month. We rely on Jared and his team to pull these numbers together, and it's been a rewarding presentation every month. Any closing thoughts, Jared?
It's never too soon to start talking about your career with a professional who can give you guidance. So even if you're not looking now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't start talking about it now and planning thoughtfully, not just what's right for you, but when the right time for you to get what you want is. Because a lot of people come to us and they're like, well, I'm not ready now. And we wind up saying, well, but now is the time for you to capitalize on your skill set. And the window of time may not be 6 months from now. It may have passed you by, or now is not the best time to look right now. You need to hold tight and wait for the market to rebound. For having all that intelligence is something that's really hard to gauge on your own. So we are here to help navigate all of that for you and with you, and hope you'll reach out to us for that kind of leadership.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Mike Quartararo. We are ACEDS. That is True Staffing. Have a great week, everyone.